So hello everyone, very good morning. So that is on lesions. So as I said, CNS is a very important clinical subject. So this topic, you will get some idea on how to apply CNS clinically and what you will be seeing in the coming years. Like you go for some general medicine posting or something, what we will actually deal with is the lesions of various tracts. So I have just made it very simple. Okay, so an university important question and then a practical important question. So I have just covered two things that will almost cover every aspect. So you do not have much to study other than these topics. So please focus on these topics alone. So objectives is we will be discussing mainly the lesions of spinal cord, because you all know ultimately every tract, if you see, like be descending tracts or ascending tracts, we have involvement of spinal cord. So if we understand the lesion of spinal cord, we will be able to understand the entire aspect of what happens in case of a lesion. So we'll be talking about two things: a transection of spinal cord, which involves two things: complete transection, incomplete transection, and hemisection of spinal cord. So what is the meaning of hemisection? Only half of the spinal cord is going to be damaged. That is called as an hemisection of spinal cord. Transection generally refers to a tear of spinal cord. Okay, so complete, if the entire spinal cord is going to be torn, it is called as a complete transection. If there is some bits and pieces alone torn, it is called as an incomplete transection. So we are just going to see how a patient will know clinically present if he is coming with a complete transection or an incomplete transection or an hemisection. So with this, we'll start with the session, a small session, an interesting session also. So first thing, as I said, we are going to move into a complete transection. So first and foremost thing that you should understand, what is a transection? So I've already told you, transection is nothing but a tear of spinal cord. So if the entire spinal cord is going to be torn, it is complete. If there is only some part which is being torn, it is an incomplete transection. So complete transection, if you take where it is most commonly happening, okay, or which is the most commonest site, it is mostly at the mid-thoracic level. Okay, so at the range of T5, T6. So at the mid-thoracic level, we have this complete transection. Just a theoretical point. Okay, so most commonly involves mid-thoracic level. Okay. Now, please understand, anything we study, be it a transection or be it hemisection or be it complete or incomplete, clinically, what are the stages that we are going to have? Okay, say suppose I have been injured in a spinal cord. Okay, so in my spinal cord, due to some cause. Okay, what is the cause? Either some gunshot injury. Okay, in case of some victims of any crime, that can be a possibility of spinal cord injury because of gunshot. Or in some race people, okay, who are fond of racing in ECR roads or something, they will be fond of because of bike accidents. So there can be some vascular accidents taking place. So because of that, they can have a transection. So mostly if you take the common causes, it can be either a gunshot injury or it can be an accident or a trauma. Okay, trauma due to accidents. Okay, so what will happen? Say suppose I have got some no trauma. Okay, so I have met an accident and my spinal cord has been injured. Okay, so now if you take, what will happen to me? So the moment I get an injury, I'm going to show some response, and that is the first stage of transection. That is called stage of spinal shock. So you all know our body, if we just damage any structure in our body, we are going to have some reaction that the body is going to show. Body is getting, it is going to show some reaction. Okay, so the first thing I get immediately after injury to my spinal cord is stage of spinal shock. So I'm going to have some changes in my activities, physiological activities. That stage is called as spinal shock. So it's a very pathetic stage. Okay, so if I am an healthy individual, okay, I did not have any alcohol habits, okay, or I'm not a chronic smoker, or my immunity system is proper, or I do not have any underlying diseases like toxemia or something, then I will recover. That recovery stage is stage of reflex activity. So you all know what are reflexes. So you would have studied already. We have so many superficial reflexes, deep reflexes. So once, if I am an healthy individual, I will recover from spinal shock very soon. Okay, we'll see the duration and I'm going to recover. That stage is called as stage of reflex activity. Say suppose I'm not an healthy individual, I'm a chronic alcoholic person, I'm a chronic smoker, or I have some underlying diseases like a toxemia or some underlying diseases, a serious disease. then my body is not going to recover from stage of spinal shock. So I go to stage of reflex failure, where my conditions become even more worse and I'm not going to recover back to normal. Okay, so these are the clinical stages. So stage of spinal shock that happens immediately after injury, and that lasts for around 3 to 4 weeks, after which if I am an healthy individual, I have a stage of reflex activity. If I am not a healthy individual, I have a stage of reflex failure. Okay, so these are these. So this is the first and basic thing that you must understand. So any lesion of spinal cord you study, complete transection, incomplete transection, or hemisection, you should write your answer based on these three side headings: spinal shock, reflex activity, reflex failure. So first sad stage is your spinal shock. So what is this spinal shock? Cessation of all functions and activity below the level of section. This word is very important. You should define what is a spinal shock. So you have told it is a cessation of all functions and activity. Okay, so our body is not going to do the normal functions and activity. So that is all stopped. Where the impact is going to be, okay, is below the level of section. So the symptoms that you show in stage of spinal shock, it depends on level of section. Okay, so if it is going to be at a level of C5, say for example, you have some neck injury. Okay, so in the neck part, that is in the C5 or above C5, okay, you have an injury means your respiratory muscles and respiratory centers are all going to be inactive, because you know this diaphragm, all that is going to receive fibers from C4, C5, C6, mainly from C4. So if you take all this, respiratory paralysis will be happening. Okay, so the function cessation is all going to depend at the level of section. Okay, so cessation of all functions and activity below the level of section immediately after the injury. So this is the correct definition of spinal shock. Okay, cessation of all functions and activity below the level of section immediately after the injury. So now I told you there is going to be some differences in duration, all that. Okay, so if you take, we have a phenomenon called as encephalization. What is this? We have a phenomenon called as encephalization. So please understand one thing. Before understanding what is encephalization, the duration and the recovery time from the spinal shock is going to depend on the organisms. Lower the organism, the easy the recovery. Okay, higher the organism, more duration it takes for recovery. That is, rate of recovery is directly proportional to the level of organization of organism. If you take, we humans are highly complicated structures, right? So why? Because we have this phenomenon called encephalization. Basically, if you want me to tell what is encephalization, all your neuronal activities are going to be related to your spinal cord. That is called as encephalization. Okay, so because we higher organisms, we have very important role of spinal cord playing with us, this recovery is going to be so long. So under spinal shock, the second point that you must write is the duration of the stage and the recovery from the stage is highly dependent on complexity of organisms. So humans, we have the highest duration and recovery rate. So it takes about 3 to 4 weeks because of encephalization. What is encephalization? Involvement of primarily the spinal cord for various neurological function is called as encephalization. Please look into the exact definition. I have just given you an outline of what is encephalization. And this term, diasthesis, okay, it's again a terminology that is given in the textbooks. I just do not want to miss that. These terminologies might give you better marks. So diasthesis is nothing but, see, our neural system, you all know it is all integrated. Okay, so every part of our body is going to be involved in this neuronal activities. Okay, so any damage happening at anywhere is going to be reflected so seriously. Okay, so the integrated system of our neurology is called as diasthesis. Okay, so because of the integrated part, if there is damage at any side, it is going to show a major thing. Manifestation பயங்கரமா இருக்கும். எல்லாம் ஒண்ணா இருக்கு. See, நம்ம நார்மலா you can take an example. ஒரு குரூப்பா you people are there, okay, ஒரு 10 people நீங்க குரூப்பா உங்க காலேஜ்ல இருக்கீங்க. அதுல ஒரு குரூப் மெம்பருக்கு ஒரு பிரச்சனை என்ன ஆகும்? 10 பேருக்கும் பிரச்சனை மாதிரி people will come out and make it a very big issue. Same thing it happens with neural system. Along any path, ஒரு இடத்துல if there is a small damage, the entire system is gone or entire system is under trouble. That is called as diasthesis. Okay, so these 3 points you should remember under spinal shock. Okay, so these are all some introductory points that you must know. Now, spinal shock. So what all are going to happen? I said 3 weeks, I told you recovery duration. What is going to happen in the 3 weeks? So we will going to have major 4 effects: motor effects, sensory effect, vasomotor effect, and visceral effects. So if you take motor effects, basically understand. So we saw so many pathways: ascending tract, ascending tract. So it was related to muscles. It was related to sensory system also. Okay, so motor effects, if you take, we are going to have paralysis of muscles, loss of tone of muscles, and something called areflexia. Okay, what is the meaning? What is the meaning of areflexia? Areflexia, which means absence of reflexes. So you all know we have superficial reflex, we have deep reflexes. So these reflexes are going to be lost. Okay, so motor effects in stage of spinal shock: paralysis of muscle, loss of tone of muscles, and then areflexia. Next, sensory effects. What are the sensory effects? So basically all the sensations that is carried by the spinal cord is going to be lost. Okay, that is the meaning of sensory effects. So all the sensations are lost. Vasomotor effect, that is important for your sympathetic, that is your spinal shock. So what is the picture I have put on the side? This is depicting the thoracolumbar outflow. So you would have studied anatomy, right? We have the thoracolumbar outflow, wherein the fibers, the preganglionic fibers, postganglionic fibers. So if you take, these are the ganglions. So we have some set of fibers that arises from your vertebral, from your thoracic vertebral, also from your lumbar vertebral. So this is called as thoracolumbar system. So if you take, it is going to start from T1 and it is going to extend up to L3 or sometimes even L4. So this is called thoracolumbar outflow. So fibers from these segments are going to supply multiple organs like your lung, heart, stomach, everything. Okay, so vasomotor, which means what? Something in your blood. So please understand, from your thoracolumbar outflow, we are having fibers that is going to supply the heart as well as the blood vessels. So we have some fibers that is going to supply the peripheral arterioles. So these finest branches, right? So those branches in general, they have an effect of vasoconstriction. Maybe if I tell by words, please listen carefully, very important point. So this is your thoracolumbar outflow, and what I told you just now, ingendu varapora fibers are going to supply various organs, various structures. One such important structure is nothing but your blood vessels. And blood vessels, enna story sonna, we have your artery that will divide into finer branches, and we have these arterioles. So in the fibers arising from your thoracolumbar outflow, they are going to supply these finest arterioles. Okay, or the muscles that are going to line these finest arterioles. So if this particular system is stimulated, it is going to cause contraction of the smooth muscles lining this arterioles. So what is going to happen? There is vasoconstriction. So what is the role of a sympathetic or a thoracolumbar outflow supplying the arterioles? அது வந்து நம்மளுக்கு constriction cause பண்ண போகுது. If it is going to cause constriction, there is going to be increase in BP. Now tell me, I went for a bike race, my T1 level is damaged. So what is going to happen? Ultimately, கீழ இருக்க எந்த ஃபைபருமே சப்ளை பண்ண போறது இல்லை, right? We do not have any fibers that is going to arise from a thoracolumbar outflow. So what is going to happen? My arteriole constriction will not happen. Instead of that, dilatation is going to happen. If dilatation happens, you all know the lumen is increasing, so the BP will decrease, right? BP is going to decrease. So vasomotor effect, if the spinal shock or the injury involves T1 segment, it is going to cause a serious effect. What is that effect? My BP is going to be decreased. Why my BP is decreased? Because of arteriolar dilation. Why is there an arteriolar dilation? Because the fibers arising from my thoracolumbar outflow, they supply the arterioles, which is responsible for causing contraction of your arterioles or constriction of your arterioles. Okay, this is what is the story. Vasomotor, very important. Ultimately, dilatation nadakapodhu. That's it. Take over. Visceral effects. Again, I told you, it supplies many structures, right? supplies bladder. So bladder supply. So what is going to, you all would have studied the nervous supply, right? So if this particular sympathetic supply is stopped, there's going to be urinary retention. It is going to supply even the rectum. Okay, from your sacral segments, you can have even the rectum being supplied. So that is going to cause constipation. Okay, so these are some visceral effects. So what happens with bladder? What happens with rectum? So what are the things that we saw? You have been injured, okay, due to gunshot injury or due to some road traffic accidents. So moment you have been injured in the spinal cord, you have some functions and activities that are going to be stopped below the section, that is called as spinal shock. And we saw why we are now getting some delayed responses to come out of spinal shock is because of encephalization and also a phenomenon called diastasis. Okay, so we are going to have some motor effects, some sensory effects, some vasomotor effects, some visceral effects. What is the motor effects? Motor only muscle. So there is going to be loss of, there's going to be paralysis of muscles, there's going to be loss of tone of muscles, and there's going to be loss of all reflexes. Okay, next, sensory effects. What are the sensory effects we have? Sensory effects, if you take, that is going to be what? Loss of all sensations. Next, vasomotor effects. What is the vasomotor effect? Vasomotor effect, if you take, we have these, no arterial dilatation is going to happen. Because of that, we are going to have decrease in BP, and we saw the story also. Next, finally, visceral effects. So all these symptoms are going to happen for about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, from which we are going to recover if we are a healthy individual. That is called stage of reflex activity, or called as recovery phase. So this order you must remember, because this is what will differentiate you from a complete transection and an incomplete transection of spinal cord. So in stage of reflex activity, the first thing what is going to involve is there is going to be no gaining of tone of a smooth muscle. So smooth muscle, you all know, it is going to be with viscera. Okay, so all your urinary retention will go, your reflex defecation will happen because rectum is being spared now. Okay, so first step in a complete transection recovery is bringing back or the normal tone of smooth muscle. So all your visceras are going to function properly now. Followed by, if your visceras has to perform properly, it has to get sufficient nutrients. So the next step will be blood vessel. So blood vessel is going to come back to normal. So your BP is going to be raised and it is going to come back to normal. Okay, so that arterial dilatation is going to be reversed. Next comes the skeletal muscle. So these two especially is what is going to differentiate the complete transection from incomplete transection. So please understand these two alone. So skeletal muscle, we all know it as a voluntary muscle, and we have a flexor group, extensor group, abductor, adductor, all that. Now we are concerned only with two groups, flexor group and then extensor group. If you take skeletal muscle, we are going to have flexor component being recovered first. What is that? The flexor component will recover first. Extensor will take time for recovery. Okay, so this point you must know. So what is going to recover first? Flexor component will recover first, followed by extensor component. Reflexes, if you take, first the flexor reflexes will come back. Okay, or your superficial reflexes will come back. Okay, to be very simple, your flexor reflexes will come back, followed by your extensor reflexes. So first you will be able to demonstrate Babinski reflex. Okay, we'll study what is a Babinski reflex. You have already studied. So first you'll be able to appreciate Babinski reflex, followed by your knee reflex, followed by your ankle jerk. Okay, so knee jerk first is your Babinski, knee jerk, and then ankle jerk. So Babinski is a flexor reflex, whereas if you take knee jerk and ankle jerk, or your extensor reflexes. So if you take complete transection, your flexor component is going to come first, followed by your extensor component. Okay, so this is about the stage of reflex activity. And reflex failure, simple. If all these are not going to recover, the patient is going to go for even more severe stages of spinal shock. Like there will be even severe form of muscle wasting, severe loss of tone, everything is going to happen. Okay, this is about your skeletal muscle and then reflexes. Now, I told you we have some differences between complete and incomplete. So if you take complete transection, we are going to have paraplegic flexion. So I told you, it's skeletal muscle, we have the flexor component that is going to come, right? So please understand, if you take paraplegia, hemiplegia, Paraplegia, if you take, if both the lower limbs are alone affected, then it is called as a paraplegia. If one side of the body is affected, it is called hemiplegia. If all the four limbs are affected, it is called as quadriplegia. You would have studied I was the one who took the class, right, on internal capsule, paraplegia, hemiplegia. So please, what is paraplegia? If my both lower limbs are affected, it is called paraplegia. What is hemiplegia? If my one side, that is my left upper limb, left lower limb, and left part of the body is affected, it is called hemiplegia. What is quadriplegia? All my four limbs, that is my two upper limbs and two lower limbs are affected, it is called quadriplegia. So here if you take, mostly we'll have a paraplegic condition. So there's going to be paraplegic flexion, which means paraplegia, what I told, the lower limbs are going to be affected. So this component paraplegia is fine. Flexion, so these lower limbs are going to be, no, its function is going to be stopped, but the limbs are going to be in a flexed position. Okay, so in the Mari, okay, so the limbs are going to be in a flexed position, that is called paraplegic flexion. Whereas if you take an incomplete transection, there is going to be extensor muscles that is going to be activated first. Why the extensor muscles are going to be activated first is because the tracts that are responsible for extensor pathway is going to be not affected. To be more specific, if you take incomplete transection of spinal cord, I told you this bits and pieces of only are going to be affected. Usually it is seen in incomplete transection of spinal cord, the vestibulospinal and reticulospinal tracts are unaffected. Very important point. What is that? Vestibulospinal and reticulospinal tracts are almost unaffected or less affected. And these tracts are responsible for supplying the extensor muscles. So since they are less affected or unaffected, during recovery, these tracts are going to gain function first. So there's going to be extension. Okay, so there's going to be paraplegic extension, which means the lower limbs are going to be in extended position. So please understand, both the muscles, they have to have a equal dominance. So our limbs are stable because we have both flexor component and extensor component showing opposition to each other. So the net effect is 0, so we are normal. If there is an unopposed action, then it is a problem. So in complete transection, there's an unopposed action of flexor component. In incomplete transection, there's an unopposed action of extensor component. Why is there an unopposed component? Because of unaffected or less affected vestibulospinal and reticulospinal tracts in case of an incomplete transection. Same. Complete transection, your flexor reflexes appear first, your extensor reflexes appear first. Here, mass reflex elicited. So I hope you all know what is a mass reflex. Like if you're going to scratch your abdominal wall or the skin, there is going to be some vigorous contraction shown. That is called as a mass reflex. But in incomplete transection, mass reflex cannot be done. Okay, so if you take, that's why there was a statement given in one of the textbook. I told you, right, if there is a transection, there is going to be this urinary retention and constipation and all that visceral effects. So to evacuate the bowel, to evacuate urine, people do mass reflex, it seems. Okay, so if they are going to do mass reflex, abdominal muscles are going to be contracted. So automatically your urine or your bowel can be emptied. Okay, so mass reflex can be elicited only in case of a complete transection, but not in incomplete transection. Next, Philipson reflex absent, Philipson reflex present. What is this Philipson reflex? It is a very interesting, I wasn't able to find any proper GIF, I'm sorry for that, but please understand. Suppose, okay, say your right side is affected, okay. You flex your left upper limb, okay, we'll just say suppose your upper limbs are affected. If you flex your left upper limb, your right upper limb is going to extend automatically. Okay, and if you are going to flex your right upper limb, your left upper limb is going to extend automatically. So the opposite movements caused by the opposite limbs. Okay, நீ right side extend பண்றீங்கன்னா left side is going to flex. Left side extend பண்றீங்கன்னா right side is going to flex. So these opposite movements shown by both the limbs is called as a Philipson reflex. Okay, so in complete transection it is absent, whereas in incomplete transection it is present. So what is the carryover point? transection is of two types, a complete transection, incomplete transection. And when I study about any lesion of spinal cord, I should remember three important clinical stages. The first stage where I suffer a lot, that is called stage of spinal shock. Next, if I am a healthy individual, I recover from this very good. So that is called as stage of reflex activity. And finally, I have a stage of reflex failure if I am not a healthy individual. So here I have just put you some basic differences between the stage of reflex activity in case of complete transection and in case of incomplete transection. So what is the first basic points that you must understand? In case of a complete transection or in case of an incomplete transection, my vestibulospinal and reticulospinal tracts are going to be less affected or unaffected. So my extensor components are going to be active first. Whereas in case of a complete transection, my entire spinal cord is gone. So only the flexor components are going to be activated first. Mass reflex can be elicited. So these three are your primary points. Please do not forget. Okay. So with this, we'll move on to ME section. Okay, so ME section, you can see this one half of the spinal cord is just going to be affected. ME means half, right? So, immediate effects, late effects. Immediate effects, if you take the same story as in spinal shock. So, you should write about the motor effect, the sensory effect, the vasomotor effect, and then the visceral effects. All are same as what you see in a transection. Late effects, if you take, that is, we will have this reflex activity and all that, is what is going to differ. And it is going to differ at the site of the ME section, above the site of ME section, below the site of ME section. எனக்கு புரியல டயக்ராமே இல்லாம I'm really sorry I wasn't able to get proper diagrams ma. Okay, but we will make it simple. Okay, say suppose this is a spinal cord. Okay, that's something resembles butterfly, right? Say suppose my lesion is here. So there are going to be some effects or some difference seen because of at the site of lesion, because of at the site of lesion, there's going to be some effects. Because of some effects, I can say above the site of lesion, some presentation. Below the site of lesion, some presentation. Okay, so we are going to study at three levels: at the site, above the site, below the site. And collectively, whatever we are going to see is called as a Brown-Séquard syndrome. So the stages, clinical stages in case of a ME section of spinal cord, which constitutes the late effects, is called as Brown-Séquard syndrome. Repeatedly asked 5 marks, and almost when you add this 100-mark paper, every year this question is asked, and definitely this year also you get a question on Brown-Séquard syndrome. Okay. So what is a Brown-Séquard syndrome? The motor and the sensory changes that happens at the level of section, below the level of section, above the level of section. So suppose this is the section. What are the motor and sensory changes that happen at this level of section, below the level of section, above the level of section? So what is the Brown-Séquard syndrome? Motor and sensory changes at the level of section, below the level of section, above the level of section constitutes Brown-Séquard syndrome. A very important question. So this tabular column is more than enough. If you are going to write all this, you can get 5 on 5, very sharp. Now at the level of section, so we will see 3 sections, right? At level, above level, below level. And in each level, you are supposed to appreciate what are the same side effects seen, what are the opposite side effects seen. Okay, in this picture, if you take, my right side of spinal cord is going to be affected. So what are the motor and the sensory changes that is going to happen in the same side, meaning the right side? What are the motor and the sensory changes that is going to happen at the opposite side? Okay, this again you'll see at 3 levels. Level, below the level, above the level. Okay, so at the level of section, what are the same side consequences? So what is the definition? Sensory and the motor changes. So I must discuss both the sensory changes and the motor changes. Sensory changes, same side, complete anesthesia. So if there is at the level of section, what are the symptoms seen? Same side, complete anesthesia. So whatever sensations is going to be given at that particular site, it is completely lost. So same side, complete anesthesia. Motor changes, we have element paralysis. We will be telling the difference between what is an element and a human. I'll be giving you a basic idea. So please understand, if it is at the level of section, we are going to have element paralysis, lower motor neuron paralysis. I hope you all know what is the upper motor neuron and lower motor neuron. You remember when I taught descending tracks, I gave you an introduction. Okay, that is from your center till your spinal cord. It is upper motor neuron. From the spinal cord to the receptor or to the organ, that is called as a lower motor neuron. So element paralysis. So basically the neuron that is going to start from your spinal cord is going to be damaged. So element paralysis and UMN paralysis. So at the level of section, if what we are going to see is the element paralysis. So because of that, we are going to have some motor changes on the same side. Opposite side. See, always remember, same side, the damage will be more. Opposite side, there will be only less changes or even no proper changes. Sensation usually does not happen, but sometimes there can be loss of pain, temperature, etc. on the opposite side. Motor changes, again, no effects, or there can be some mild motor loss effects. Okay, so same side, very important, is a element paralysis. So this can be a question, MCQ question also. Okay, what kind of motor change can you observe in same side level of section? Answer should be element paralysis. Okay, if it is below the lesion, okay, what are these sensory changes? So you all remember injury to tracts of gall and Budak. What is this tracts of gall and Budak? Dorsal column pathway. If you remember, I gave you a beautiful acronym. V, find, physiology, teacher, teaching, stereognosis. Okay, so V for vibration. Okay, and then fine touch, tactile discrimination, tactile localization, and then stereognosis. All these are some of your sensations carried by your tracts of gall and Budak. Okay, that is your dorsal column pathway. So on same side below the lesion, there is going to be injury to dorsal column pathway. So what is going to happen? The sensations carried by those pathway are going to be affected on the same side, but there is no injury to the spinothalamic tract. That is sensations carried by spinothalamic tract. You will have the screw touch, okay, and then pain sensation, all this carried by your spinothalamic tract. Okay, so same side below the lesion, dorsal column pathway is injured, but no injury to spinothalamic tract. But on the opposite side, there is no injury to dorsal column pathway, but there is injury to spinothalamic tract. Okay, that means that is the crossing level, there is going to be some damage, so it is going to be reflected in the opposite side only. Okay, this is again a very important point. So if my right side is going to be affected, if there is a lesion in the right side of the tract of the spinal cord, my right side dorsal column pathway is lost, but there is no spinothalamic tract being affected. But on the opposite side, it is the other way around. So remember one side, so you can write the other side. Motor changes at the level of lesion, we have an element paralysis. Motor changes in the below the lesion, is going to be UMN paralysis. Okay, so below the lesion. So below na, remember opposite. So that's going to be UMN paralysis. So at the level, below the level. Above the level, you do not have much changes. So I have not included above the level. Probably for completion sake, you can write. So how you can summarize Brown-Sequard syndrome? The late effects that is going to be seen, okay, because of hemisection of spinal cord is called as Brown-Sequard syndrome. So the motor and sensory changes at the level of lesion, below the level, above the level of section, it constitutes Brown-Sequard syndrome. So if it is at the level of section, there is going to be complete loss of anesthesia. I can say same side complete anesthesia and element paralysis at the same side when the lesion is at level of section. Below the level of section, okay, what are the changes that is going to happen? My dorsal column pathway is going to be lost and UMN paralysis of the same side. Very important. These are all some facts that you need to memorize. Okay, I wasn't able to get any proper picture or an understanding thing. I wasn't able to get. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Next, practical, very important. Examiners love this question. Where you see spasticity, where you see flaccidity, where you see wasting of muscles, where you see loss of reflexes, everything. So element lesion, UMN lesion. So lower motor neurons, so spinal cord neurons, okay. So anterior on of the cells, whatever neurons are related, if that is damaged, that is called lower motor neuron. Upper motor neuron, if there is any neuron that is going to control the neurons of spinal cord, then that is called UMN, upper motor neuron lesion. This concept you know. So lower motor neuron lesion is most commonly seen in cases of poliomyelitis, poliovirus affected. Whereas UMN lesion mostly in case of vascular accidents. From this, it is very important. In case of a lower motor neuron lesion, only a single or an individual muscles are going to be affected. Whereas in case of an upper motor neuron lesion, group of muscles are going to be affected because upper motor neuron is going to come from the center. Okay, so that neurons can establish connections to many group of muscles. But lower motor neuron, if you take from a particular on of a cell, the lower motor neuron is going to go only to one particular group of muscle. So if there is a lower motor neuron lesion, a single or an individual muscle is affected, but in an upper motor neuron lesion, group of muscles are affected. You are going to have flaccid paralysis. What is the meaning of flaccid paralysis? Decreased tone of a muscle affected is called flaccid paralysis. Okay, why there is a flaccid paralysis is because of the reflex arc is also damaged. Whereas if you take spasm, there's going to be wild contractions. So what is the meaning of wild contraction? The muscle tone is increased so much. That is a spastic paralysis. So hypertonia is going to be seen. Okay, so hypotonia, reflex arc damage in lower motor neuron lesion, that is called as a flaccid paralysis. Hypertonia, the reflex arc is going to be intact, that is called as a spastic paralysis. So upper motor neuron is more of it is so much, it is rumba over upper motor neuron lesion. See, group of muscles affected, spastic paralysis. Next, wasting of muscle seen. So since there is hypotonia, there's going to be loss of power of the muscle because this reflex arc is damaged. There's going to be dystrophy or the wasting of muscles. But if you take in case of upper motor neuron lesion, I have already told you, the reflex arc is going to be intact. So there is no loss of muscle power and there's hypotonia. So wasting of muscles is not at all seen. It is absent. And areflexia. Okay, what is the meaning of areflexia? Both the superficial reflexes and the deep reflexes are lost. L for L, both are lost. But here if you take very bad, superficial reflexes are absent, but deep reflexes are exaggerated. Again, very important point. Comment on the changes in the reflexes that you see in case of an LMN and a UMN lesion. Favorite examiner's question. Areflexia in case of LMN lesion where both the reflexes are lost. In case of UMN lesion, superficial is absent, deep is going to be exaggerated. Next, these three are very important. The most important, Babinski sign negative, clonus absent, clasp knife reflex absent. LMN lesion, everything is going to be less or absent. UMN, it is going to be more, either positive or present. What is the meaning of Babinski sign or a reflex? This picture. Okay, so with a pencil or a mild sharp object, if you are just going to go, if you are going to make a sign like this. Okay, so on the sole of the foot, he is going to start from the laterally and he is going to scratch medially. What you're able to see is fanning of toes. His toes are moving like a fan. You're able to appreciate. See this portion. He's fanning. And toe, if you take that, is dorsiflexion. That toe madangita flexadu. Dorsiflexion. Babinski sign positive means this is a Babinski sign positive. It's a flexor reflex because there is what? Dorsiflexion of great toe and fanning or abduction of the little toes. Can you appreciate this fanning? Fan curve right? That is fanning of small toes and dorsiflexion of great toe. This is Babinski sign positive. When it is seen in case of an upper motor neuron lesion. Okay, lower motor neuron lesion, right, is going to be negative because lower motor neuron lesion is what is going to supply the muscles, right? So it is not seen. So Babinski sign reflex is going to be negative in case of an LMN lesion. It is positive in case of an upper motor neuron lesion. Clonus absent. Clonus means the continuous rigid contractions of a muscle is called as clonus. LMN lesion absent. UMN lesion present. We saw, right? All recent hypotonia, spastic paralysis, that is what? Clonus. Okay, so clonus is present. Next, clasp knife reflex absent. See, this is a picture of a clasp knife. Okay, in movies, villains will have. Okay, dummy villains. Okay, hero மிரட்டுறதுக்கு our pant pocket he will take a knife. He will just open, it will come out. Okay, so what is this clasp knife? Basically, blade of the knife is going to be inserted into an handle. Typically, the dummy villain use பண்ற knife that's a clasp knife. Okay. Okay, இந்த ஹீரோயினை வெறுப்பேற்றுவாங்க, அப்பதான் ஹீரோ கோவம் வந்து he will start ஒரு ஆக்ஷனே காமிப்பாரு. He will hit 40 people in a time. Okay, all this is when the dummy villain takes his clasp knife. Okay, and அப்படியே எடுத்து கழுத்துல வைப்பாரு. ஹீரோ கோவம் வந்துட்டு ரொமான்ஸ்ல he will fight with people. Okay, so if you take, what thing can you observe? This blade is bent and it is going to be in a position. that is called as a clasp knife reflex. Again, it is present in case of a Neumann lesion. So what happens? Observe the second GIF. Okay, now legs are relaxed. He's pushing hard. Initially, no movement is not taking place. But later, it is showing. Okay, initially, there is a resistance to the movement offered. But over a period of time, the movement is no respond very fastly. Such kind is called as a clasp knife reflex. If you take it, looks like a clasp knife, right? What is to define it properly? There is an increased resistance to a movement, passive movement. What is the meaning of passive movement? You are doing it voluntarily. So initially, there is a resistance shown to a passive movement. Suddenly, the resistance decreases and movement happens freely. Again, observe the left leg. Initially, is doing a passive movement. There is a restriction, resistance. But see, now suddenly is no leg is flexed. That is called as a clasp knife reflex. That is again positive in case of a upper motor neuron lesion. So Babinski sign positive, clasp knife reflex positive, clonus present, spastic paralysis, okay, and then wasting of muscles absent, deep reflex is exaggerated. So these are some differences between LM and lesion, Neumann lesion. So I hope you all understood. So Brown-Sequard syndrome is a very important question. You need to include all these points in form of table. If you do it is better. And no, here you can mention these sensations. Okay. Since no, I just wanted you people to recollect, so I have not included any sensations. And normally I do not like to put so much text. Okay, that's why I didn't include. But you need to mention all these sensations that is carried. So that will give you full marks. Okay. And if you take LM and paralysis, you will list out flaccidity. Okay, wasting of muscles seen, hypotonia. Okay, and all these reflexes negative. So all these you will include here. Okay, if it is case of upper motor lesion, you will all the points that we saw there. This is the basic thing. Okay. So once again, thank you all.